Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Baker, Chair of DRCOG. Welcome to the meeting. I'm going to call to order the Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation. Thank you, everyone. We're going to move into roll call, but first I just wanted to ask, is there anybody that's here for the first time as a board of a director? Yes, would you introduce yourselves to us, please? Could you turn on the microphone if you would, just so that it's captured?
Obviously, first time here.
Yeah.
Kathleen Bailey, I'm the Mayor Pro Tem of Mountain View, the town of Mountain View.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Anybody else here for the first time? Director Rupert.
Brad Rupert, I'm here, City Council on behalf of Arvada.
Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. And Ms. Stevens, if you would call the roll.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Okay, here we go. Julie Duran-Mullica, Adams County. Kathy Henson, Adams County. Jeff Baker, Arapahoe County.
Here.
Claire Levy, Boulder County. Here. Austin Ward, City and County of Broomfield.
Here.
Rebecca Lloyd, Clear Creek County. Adam Paul, Denver. Here. Kevin Flynn, Denver.
Here.
Kevin Van Winkle, Douglas County. Here. Susan Berriman, Gilpin County. Andy Kerr, Jefferson County. Rachel Zenzinger, Jefferson County. Arvada, Sharon Davis. Brad Rupert, Arvada.
Here.
Allison Coombs, Aurora. Larry Vittum, Bennett. Royce Pindell, Bennett. David Spellman, Blackhawk. Nicole Spear, Boulder. Greg Mills, Brighton.
Here.
Deborah Mulvey, Castle Pines. Jason Gray, Castle Rock. Tim Dietz, Castle Rock. Tammy Maurer, Centennial. Zane Plasek, Central City. Robert Eber, Cherry Hills Village. Susan McGuire, Cherry Hills Village. Steve Douglas, Commerce City.
Here.
Thank you. Michelle Rogers, Dacono. Adam Moorhead, Dacono. Steve Conklin, Edgewater.
Evening.
Othaniel Sierra, Inglewood. Kim Wright, Inglewood. Emily Bayer, Erie. Linda Montoya, Federal Heights. Sarah Dawn Pearlstein, Federal Heights. Ray Bird, Firestone. Don Cognac, Firestone. Josie Cockrell, Foxfield. Lisa Jones, Foxfield. Wendy Padilla, Frederick. Georgia Kofoed, I'm so sorry. Georgetown. Rich Barrows, Georgetown. Rachel Binkley, Glendale. Lisa Vitry, Golden. Paul Haveman, Golden. George Lance, Greenwood Village. Here. Chuck Harmon, Idaho Springs. Here. Brian Wong, Lafayette. Here. Jeslyn Sherzai, Lakewood. Here. Isaac Levy, Larkspur. Stephen Barr, Littleton. Kyle Schlachter, Littleton. Kat Bristow, Lockbuoy. Here. Marissa Harmon, Lone Tree. Alicia Brown, Lone Tree. Joan Peck, Longmont. Judy Kern, Louisville. Present. Holly Rogan, Lyons. Here. Colleen Whitlow, Meade. Here. Angela Bernhardt, Morrison. Adam Way, Morrison. Kathleen Bailey, Mountain View. Here. Nicole Sterling, Nederland. Richard Kondo, North Glen.
Here.
John Dyack, Parker. Here. Terrence Kelly, Sheridan. Tara Biter-Fleur, Sheridan. Lee Bernardo, Silver Plume. Neil Shaw, Superior. Justin Martinez, Thornton. Here. Sarah Nermella, Westminster. Claire Carmelia, Westminster. Bud Starker, Wheat Ridge. Darius Pakbaz, CDOT. Sally Chafee, CDOT. Bill Soroy, RTD.
Here.
All right, and with that, Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Melinda. We appreciate that. The next item on our agenda is report of the chair, and I have a public hearing announcement I'd like to read. The Denver Regional Council of Governments has scheduled a public hearing for June 18th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. to receive comments on the 2025 Public Engagement Plan, People-Centered Projects and Services. The public hearing will be in a hybrid format at the DRCOG office, 1001 17th Street, Aspen Conference Room on the first floor, Denver, Colorado 80202. And it will also be on Zoom. Further information about the public hearing is currently available on DRCOG's website and was available as of May 4th, 2025, the beginning of the public comment period. And with that, under report of the chair, I would like to invite Mayor Holly Rogan from the town of Lyons to come forward along with Flo Raitano, DRCOG staff. If you would please come to the front here. There you go.
Thank you, everybody. Where's Dr. Flo? So last winter, the town of Lyons was so fortunate to have Dr. Flo come and facilitate our board retreat for us. It was wonderful. We made so much progress. And in Lyons, in our tiny boardroom, we have a town hall art show once a quarter. And Dr. Flo fell in love with a piece there that was sold to somebody else. And as a gesture of our appreciation, the town of Lyons is presenting DRCOG this art piece by the same artist in the same vein in honor of Dr. Flo. So thank you, Dr. Flo. Hello? Yeah. So this piece is fashioned out of wood and the metal was melted in the Stone Canyon fire.
There we go. Like, I want to see your nice faces.
Thank you, Mayor. We appreciate you doing that for Flo. Next up is a report from the Performance and Engagement Committee. Director Kondo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today, the Performance and Engagement Committee met with the primary focus of selecting a recipient for the John V. Christensen Memorial Award, which will remain a state secret. Well, you're not going to get anything out of me, so. And that is all I have to report, sir.
Thank you very much. And now we have a report from the Finance and Budget Committee. Director Sherazai.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Another robust agenda from the Finance and Budget Committee. We approved a total of 9 contracts this evening, including things regarding Way to Go partnerships and incentives and energy advisement program design and implementation. We also discussed moving our meeting times for committee to after our board work sessions to allow for more attendance because we oftentimes have quorum issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Executive Director Rex, your report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, very much, and good evening, everybody. It's great to see you all. I'll start this evening with, well, the award celebration. So just as a reminder, as I do every month, I do have a couple of reminders for you. So the event itself is August 27th at the Sewell Ballroom at the Denver Center of Performing Arts. This annual event is hosted by you, the Board of Directors, and of course, you're all invited to attend free of charge at your tables. You'll find a flyer with a link to access your complimentary registration. You can also bring a guest for $49. The DRCOG Award Celebration is truly one of the signature events of the fall season, and it's our opportunity to celebrate the people, projects, and programs that make this such a great place to live, work, and play. So please, please register. We want to see as many of you as possible on that night. In addition, I'd like to, once again, to just, to ask you to please consider table sponsorship opportunities for your community. Last year, we had a record number of member governments, supporting our event, and we're hopeful to build on that success. We're a little down on sponsorships right now, so, you know, if that guilts you a little bit more to talk to your city managers or county managers to get a table sponsorship, hey, I'll do whatever I can right now. And there's also, the flyer talks about the sponsorships and everything that's at your desk. We also, of course, we encourage you, if you have some insight into businesses that you think might want to be involved and participate in this event, we'd be happy to chase those down. Just we need names to do that. So please just let myself or Steve Erickson know, and we'll get going. We're really excited about this. You know, we had, we selected the JVC John V. Christian Award winner tonight. We've also have emails out to Distinguished Service Award winners. And I know the MetroVision Awards are going to be at least, I don't know if it'll take multiple meetings, but the first meeting of the group that selects those is on Friday, I believe, Sheila, if she's here, on Friday. And we have like 26 or so applications that were submitted for consideration, which is a large number for us. So it only speaks to the quality work that's being done out in the community. So thank you for that. I also just real quickly want to share with you related to our regional housing assessment. Excuse me here real quick. We did receive notice today from DOLA that our regional housing needs assessment it has been approved as what they call substantial. It substantially conforms to the required methodology that's within statute. So now that we've received that designation, it is now eligible to be used by our member local governments if you so choose. So we will, we're planning on rolling that out on July 14th. We'll open up the 60-day public hearing period. So, but there'll be a lot more information and communication sent to you all as well as your staffs associated with that. And I know Sheila and her staff are making sure that all of our member local government staffs are aware that they can utilize that document if again, you so desire to do so. So stay tuned on that. And the last thing I have for you this evening is some personnel news. Ron Papsdorf, our Transportation Planning and Operations Director, is moving on. Ron has taken a position with our peer agency in Houston, the Houston-Galveston Area Council, HGAC, or as I call them, HGAC, because they hate it. And so anyway, so obviously our loss is an asset for them, obviously. And, we're really going to miss Ron around here. So he'll be here next month, right, Ron? He's still got one more board meeting. And the reason I'm telling you tonight, that if he promised you anything, be sure to get it in the next month. But I don't know if you'll get it after that. I got a growing list of things he promised me he was going to get done. So we're going to miss you, Ron, for sure. But we're so appreciative of all the work that you've done for us here in this region, and we wish you the best, sir. Inside joke, but yes, they do up whoops there as well. For those that know what we're talking about. It's a party. Party. Well, I might just heard Mayor Mills is hosting a party in Ron's honor. I know we are having a little, I know staff's put together a little happy hour. I don't know the date and time, but we can send that out if anybody's interested. All right, and with that, Mr. Chair, that's my report.
Thank you, Doug. We're going to move on to item number 7, which is public comment. Up to 45 minutes is allocated now for public comment, and each speaker will have will be limited to 3 minutes. If there are additional requests from the public to address the board, time will be allocated at the end of the meeting to complete public comment. The chair requests that there be no public comment on issues for which a prior public hearing has been held before this board. Consent and action items will begin immediately after the last speaker. Is there anyone in the room that wishes to make public comment to the board of directors? I'm not seeing any. Melinda, do we have anybody online?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have one person online. Unfortunately, they are labeled as iPhone through Zoom, so if you could please state your name once we unmute you.
This is Randall Loeb.
Thank you, Randall.
Good evening, everybody, and I'm delighted that it's possible to communicate with you at all. I now live in an intentional community, and I've talked about it before. It's called Angelica Village. It's in Lakewood, and it's for people who are basically struggling to take care of their families. I was at a meeting just before this of the Denver Basic Income. And it seems to me that we need to come up with some creative strategies to make it possible for us to survive in this distressed and difficult time for many people who are starting their lives. And I'm just pointing out again, which I have, of course, many times, that it's our responsibility at the most local level of government to ensure that the republic survives. That's about all I need to impart, but I hope that you'll come up with creative strategies to reduce the impact of the burgeoning inflation and the difficulty it is for persons to just basically put basic things on the table for us to use and consume and to take care of our health and welfare. And you have a good night, everybody, and a safe trip home. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Loeb. We appreciate your comments. Are there any other public comments? All right, I will close public comment period at this time. We're going to move on to item number 8 on our agenda. This is I'd be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda, which consists of our April 16th, 2025 meeting summary. Everyone has had a chance to review that. Also would accept any recommendations to make any changes to those minutes. Seeing none, looking for a motion. Director Kondo.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. We have a second from Mayor Starker. Thank you very much. We'll move to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries and the consent agenda has been approved. We're moving on to item number 9. This is an action item. This is discussion on approval of the DRCOG fiscal year 2025-2026 budget. It is attachment B in your packet. And I'll recognize Director Jenny Hunnings, Director of Administration and Finance, for this presentation.
I was excited to talk about the budget. Woo-hoo! Yeah. So actually, we have a really interesting year ahead. So I think that this is going to be informative and a little bit different than our normal budget presentation from years past. So first off, I always like to go through the budget process with members because some of us have been through this process many times, and then we have new members who might not know exactly how all of this unfolds. But the budget process actually begins in February, and that's when staff starts composing draft budgets, and with their staff, and looks forward to upcoming projects and potential revenue streams and expenditures. And then in April, we actually bring a draft budget to the Finance and Budget Committee for their review, and we give the opportunity for recommendations or if they feel that there are any revisions needed. In early May, we have a special meeting to make sure that the budget is solidified by the Finance and Budget Committee and moved for recommendation to the Board of Directors. And that brings us to tonight, where we're looking for your consideration and hopefully approval of the budget. So that's where we are tonight. So this year, as I already stated, is a very interesting year. With the decarbonization grant, we are essentially almost doubling our budget over previous years. So in the past, our budget has averaged between $56 to $58 million. And this year we are approaching $103 million. So that's a big difference. So it's hard to have a year-over-year comparison when we have such a major change. Some of the things that are contributing outside of the decarbonization grant are our TIP set-aside projects. And then also we received a grant from the Build America Bureau grant, which this year will contribute about $500,000. So between all of those factors combined, we're looking at about 162% increase in federal revenue. So that's a big change. The AAA will increase slightly due to an increase in the Veterans Directed Care Program participation. So on average, that is a claims-based program, and on average, we've had about 110 to 115 participants in that program, and this year we're looking at having about 130. So that brings that contract up to about $6 million. So that is a big increase as well, which is leveling out some of that funding in the AAA. Another important fact to mention is that we're keeping member contributions flat this year because we understand that there's, significant budgetary constraints amongst a lot of our member jurisdictions. So because of that fact, we wanted to just keep member dues or contributions flat this year. And as previously noted, we are looking at alternative motives or ways that we can contribute or calculate member contributions, and that'll be forthcoming in the coming. We'll hear more about that down the road. The main thing that I think is important for the board to know is that we will remain budget neutral, even though we've had this large influx in revenue. Our expenditures will equal that revenue. Our beginning balance is around $13.5 million and will remain at the end of the year from the budget year at about $13.5 million. So we do expect to remain budget neutral. Important. So this is my 10th year anniversary, and those of you who were at the board workshop or retreat a few weeks ago already saw this, but I thought this was really interesting because it's so difficult right now to compare year over year because of our revenue increase this year. I thought it was interesting to look back to the first budget I prepared 10 years ago, and you'll see that our revenue was $16.3 million, and this year it's close to $103 million. So in 10 years, we've grown quite a bit. So in addition to that, even our employee base, so 10 years ago, when I started, we were around 85 employees, and now we're 150 plus. So we've really grown a lot. And in addition to that, we've made steps to make sure that we're staying in step with that growth. So we've incorporated a new ERP system, a new HRIS system. We've moved essentially everything to the cloud and other technological advancements to make sure that we're keeping up with the growth of the organization. So another important thing to mention is the merit pool increase for this year. So this year we are recommending a 4% merit pool increase. And so in consideration of this percentage, we surveyed a number of member jurisdictions to make sure we were in line with what our other communities were also dealing with merit. And then we also sought comparative comps from Employers Council, who is our government market advisor to DRCOG. And then we reviewed periodicals such as the Denver Business Journal and others. And 4% seemed to be the average of where most jurisdictions and the market in general was landing. But I do want to note that we did include in the budget this coming year a class and compensation survey that would allow us to reevaluate salaries across the board to make sure we were staying competitive and that we're retaining talent. So with the rapid market growth, there are certain things that we've done to ensure that we're keeping up with the needs of the organization. So some of the things that we've done to ensure that is that we've increased staffing in administration and finance to address indirect needs. So we've hired some additional staff. We've hired an additional staff accountant, an additional contracts person. We've hired an additional compliance person in the AAA business ops team. We've also hired an additional person, or a new position actually, for data analytics in the AAA. We've also created a business operations team in the Building Decarbonization Grant Program, which is similar to what we have in the AAA business ops team to ensure that we're meeting all the needs of the grant and making sure that we're compliant in all of those aspects. And we're also ensuring that the team has the tools and equipment and the training that they need. So anyone that comes on board within administration and finance has the opportunity to obtain grant training, and which we find is really beneficial for their knowledge and growth within their roles. Additional positions that are in the budget this year, we are budgeting for an office manager in the executive office. So there are certain roles that both Doug, Randy, and I take on an office administration aspect that we feel would be best suited for an office manager or office administrator to handle. So we put that in the budget. There's also a senior planner in regional planning and development, a senior traveler, modeler, and safety planner, and we still have 6 staff remaining to be hired on the operations side of the Building Decarbonization Grant. And those are all paid for by the grant itself. So that is not a DRCOG burden itself. And then as far as compliance, so when we're talking about growth, compliance is really important. We want to make sure that we are able to, fulfill the obligations of the grant and meet the compliance matters. So we have regular meetings with the EPA. We're also drawing upon the experience of our auditing firm, which actually has managed similar projects throughout the nation. So they've been a great resource for us to draw upon. And then we also reach out to our contracted attorney, and she's been great about helping us with new contractual language and different regulations that have come with the decarbonization grant that are different, you know, than the typical grants that we're used to handling. And then finally, for risk management, I wanted to assure the board that we're very fiscally prudent and that we're very mindful of spending. So we maintain a strong fund balance. As I mentioned, you know, our beginning balance this year is about $13.5 million and will remain at the end of the year at $13.5 million. So we're very careful to make sure that our expenditures meet our revenue. So we keep significant cash on hand in our bank account, and that's been very beneficial because there have been times where we've had to front payments to contractors when payments have been delayed from grantors. So it's been very beneficial for us to maintain a strong bank account balance. And then we also have liquidity of investments. So I've worked with our financial advisors to make sure that we are able to withdraw funds without penalties. Most of our funds are bonds or government-backed securities. So we are able to withdraw those without penalties if we should need them in case of any pause of spending or payment. And then just mindful spending. So we're very careful about, you know, especially in the last couple months with the uncertain environment of considering who we hire, when we hire them, which contracts we execute, and which RFPs we put out. So we're very mindful of that. So as a result, we have a strong fund balance that provides us with about 3 months of operating expenses should there be a pause in payments. So overall, we're fiscally sound and meeting the requirements of what our auditors have suggested. So with that, that's my dogs. I can't get away without showing them.
Thank you.
Bud, Shelby, Winston, and Little Puppy. And yes, her name is Little Puppy. So thank you for listening, and I hope it wasn't too rough. But I'm happy to answer any questions. I know there's more information in your packet. And so if you have any more detailed questions about line items, I'm happy to answer them.
I'll be asking for questions in a minute. I was remiss. I skipped over item number 4, move to approve the agenda. So can I get a motion to approve the agenda first? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we are ready to go. Any questions for Director Hudney? Director Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jenny, can you answer a question for me about what the slide that had all the bars on it?
Yes.
58 million. Because I had this problem when I was trying to balance a checkbook, which is why I don't. The $58 million grant, so it took us to about 103 million. It set aside also increased, AAA increased. Yet if I deduct 58 million from the 103, I end up with 45 million. So it seems to me some component, some program, some category of spending has to be less. The 58 million got us up to 103 from 45.
Yes.
So what's been reduced?
So the AAA has had some reductions, and then some of our other income and in-kind. So there's a balance between our in-kind contributions when we spend less. So like the UPWP, we're spending less this year on UPWP. And so the in-kind contribution as a result will be less because the match is less. So there's kind of a push and pull there. The decarbonization grant is roughly 45 or 46 million. And And I think that that difference that you're speaking of would be the reduction in match because of the UPWP and the,
Thank you.
that program has, that has actually come down a little.
Now you know why I don't balance my checkbook. So the 24-25 total was how much?
The budget,
Yes.
roughly 57 million.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Director Maurer.
Thank you, Jenny. I was just curious, there's a lot of the programs for transportation that were cut. I'm not gonna say a lot, but there's some that were cut, like the MMOF. And that's coming up in the future years. We have something that kind of shows us what we had before and what we're going into next with these transportation cuts.
I think maybe Ron or Doug could speak to that better.
Yeah, so the cuts related to the state budget, that you're referring to, the multimodal options fund money, I think it's around $50 million statewide, which I think our share is about 30 million, which will affect us. We're having conversations right now internally about how we're gonna handle that, right? I mean, and we've sent out communication to your staffs, that have money associated, so have projects associated with the MMOF funding, just to let them know that we're aware and we're trying to figure out the best approach going forward. But it will probably involve, at the minimum, the delay of projects, right? It could be the elimination of projects as well, right? So we're trying to figure that all out, but that would not be reflected in this budget. Well, it's in the tip, so yeah.
Director? I can't see your name.
No worries. Thank you so much. Question on the staff positions. I think we all understand the value of office management, but the second position, could you explain what that is? Second, staff position that was mentioned, if you go to the
The office manager?
So that office management makes sense, planner makes sense. I think it was travel modeler. What is a travel?
Well, as an old travel modeler myself, I'm happy to take this question, Jenny. So as part of our work as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, so we're responsible for forecasting the future transportation needs, right? So part of that work involves predicting future traffic and congestion and mobility within our region. So we utilize a travel demand forecasting tool to do that. And we have staff hired to specifically do that work. So we have, Robert Spots, I don't know if he's in the room or not. He used to be, so he was he headed that group. And he moved over to the DRCOG program, and so we kind of reorganized a little bit within that group. We elevated a couple folks, which created an opportunity to bring another modeler in, which we're in serious need of. As you'll see, you will get a scenario planning presentation here in the coming months, and you'll just see the amount of detail and work that goes into predicting some of that stuff. So that's what that is. Most important job in the agency as far as I'm concerned.
Hey.
Well, okay. Second.
Thank you, Director Carmelia, for the question. Any other questions? There is a motion in your packet. The motion that I'm looking for would be to move to approve the DRCOG fiscal year 2025/26 budget.
So moved.
Have a motion? Second? I hear a second. Okay, Judy Kerr. Okay, thank you, Judy. All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much, Jenny.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
We're going to go on to item number 10, discussion of the building policy Collaborative Jurisdictional Support Subaward Program. And presenter on this will be, let me see, Greg Meow, yes. Manager, Transportation Planning and Operations.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Greg Meow. I am the program manager for the Building Policy Collaborative, which is one of the programs of the Building Decarbonization Program. We're here tonight to bring forth an action item to approve the Jurisdictional Support Subaward Program, which is one of the programs that I am overseeing that will be dispersing money to all of the DRCOG member jurisdictions over the course of the next 4 years. Before I dive too deeply into the policy, we have it pulled up and we'll jump into that policy and the different elements of that policy shortly. I did want to provide just a little bit of context for those of you who are a little bit less aware of the decarbonization program. So the decarbonization program was awarded to DRCOG in July of last year in the total amount of around roughly $200 million. And it is a market transformation program that we're going to be running here. There are 4 key pillars of this program that include an incentives program that will make it cheaper to buy heat pumps and will make it cheaper to install heat pumps across the region. There'll be a workforce development program that is aimed at providing training and jobs to fill the trades gap in the HVAC industry so that we have qualified installers going out and doing quality installations in our communities. It involves my program, which is the Building Policy Collaborative, which is really providing financial and emotional and technical support to our local jurisdictions to standardize building policy across the region. And then all of that is really supported by our 4th program, which is a communications and marketing program that's really going to help soften the market, convince people to buy into these technologies, to trust them, to really move with us as a region together to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So with that, maybe we can jump into the policy itself. Just one little bit more bit of context. This policy was developed, has been in development since basically November of last year when we started a number of community-based workshops with our local government partners to really solicit, all of your feedback and feedback from the community in terms of how should we distribute, what are the needs in the community in terms of helping get building policy adopted, and how should we distribute the funds equitably, across the region and run and administer the subaward program. So we've had roughly 5 workshops since November of 2024. This has also been to our technical committee as both a discussion item and an action item, as well as our oversight committee for the same. And we did bring this to this month's board workshop for discussion. So as we go into this policy, this is really our policy that is intended to support our local jurisdictions in adopting and implementing building decarbonization policies. That's the term I'm going to use, but really what are we talking about? We're talking about updating building codes and energy codes so that we're capturing greenhouse gas emissions coming from our new construction in our region, and then working on adopting and implementing some policies around benchmarking and performance standards to try to encourage energy efficiency and emissions reductions in our existing buildings, which is really where the majority of our building-related greenhouse gas emissions are coming from. So the last thing I will say is this is attachment C1 in your packet if you want to follow along there as well. So The policy and what was earmarked in our work plan is $34.8 million to be distributed amongst our jurisdictions to support them with local policy adoption. The other aspects of my program, just to highlight here, are a $2.5 million contract we have to facilitate a peer network to convene local staff, to support local staff in the development of these policies and to help them workshop any challenges that they may run into as they go about implementing these policies. And we also have $1 million that we have earmarked for doing some research to address questions that come up during this process from our local jurisdictions around the effectiveness of these policies, the impact of these policies, and things of that nature. So Section 1 just talks a little bit about the background of the policy. Section 2 talks a little bit about the goals of our subaward policy. This is a subaward program to encourage policy adoption and implementation. That's really where we're going to see program-wide the largest savings in greenhouse gas emissions is by addressing these regulatory levers and making sure that new construction is done in a manner that reduces our emissions and that we're getting at our existing building stock. This is also intended to support our jurisdictions in participating in our peer network. So we heard from our jurisdictions that the biggest challenge in that everyone's facing in terms of advancing policy is capacity. So we've really designed this policy to try to support our jurisdictions to bring on internal capacity or contracted capacity to work on building codes and BPS and to work with the local councils in the adoption and implementation of those policies. So Section 3 talks a little bit about our eligibility criteria. We've really designed this as a formula funding opportunity that's available to all of our jurisdictions, and we've tried our best to make this as accessible as possible. So we've kept our eligibility criteria as minimal as possible. The criteria are that you must be a DRCOG jurisdiction, and you must submit a letter of commitment. This letter of commitment is not a commitment to adopt any specific policy, but a commitment towards working towards the development and adoption of these policies, at least the exploration of these policies. It's also a commitment to participating in that peer network, which we really believe is a core foundational support for our local jurisdictions that'll be navigating this. There's a lot of nuances to these policies, and we really want to make sure that we're bringing the technical expertise from our vendors, but also leaning on the technical expertise from our building staff as we develop these policies moving forward. The last eligibility criteria really are the eligible uses. As I mentioned before, this is not intended to be a subaward program that's working on anything infrastructure related. We're not doing solar, we're not doing infrastructure, we're not doing EVs, we're doing building policy. So that's really the major limitation for what the subaward opportunity is. In terms of the actual ways that, that local jurisdictions can use this, as I mentioned before, staff capacity was the #1 thing that our jurisdictions told us they needed help with in terms of working on developing these policies and implementing them. So that can be internal, that can be shared staff across jurisdictions, that could be contracted staff through a vendor such as Safe Built for any of the services related to building decarbonization. The second use is for training and certification. We are coordinating with CEO, the Energy Office, which does have some training opportunities already out there. But this is to sort of supplement the training opportunities that the Energy Office already provides. So training certificates or professional certificates for municipal staff. And we will be doing work on our end to coordinate for our jurisdictions those training opportunities with CEO. There may be some additional permitting systems that local jurisdictions may need to procure to be able to implement these programs. So that's an allowable use. Technical assistance for project-based specific implementation assistance from any of our vendors. We'll have some codes experts available to us. We will have sustainability consultants available to us, and all of that can also be budgeted for within the subawards as jurisdictions are running specific pieces of legislation. The final sort of detailed eligible use is for jurisdiction-led community engagement efforts. The overall decarbonization program has a community engagement element to it, but we know that jurisdiction-led stakeholding is a really essential ingredient to policy adoption, successful policy adoption and implementation, and we're encouraging our jurisdictions to budget for that accordingly. Finally, we have a custom measure to support any innovative ideas that would support building policy implementation, and we're prepared to be wowed by all the ideas that come out of your jurisdictions. The policy does identify a number of ineligible uses. These are things that are going to be popping up in other aspects of our program. So we're not trying to fund you all to set up your own incentives programs. We will be running an incentives program here as part of the decarbonization program will be making funds available to residents in your communities. Energy advising, communications and marketing, and workforce development. Those are all things that we're trying to take on and fund through other aspects of our program, and we'll be discouraging our local jurisdictions from applying, proposing to use their funds for. Section 4 talks a little bit about partnerships. The award amounts here, and we'll get into those in just a second, they range from $50,000 to $2 million for our smaller jurisdictions, and that's over the course of 4 years. So for our smaller jurisdictions, we are really encouraging partnered applications, and we are currently exploring the possibility of working or facilitating partnerships between the smaller jurisdictions and our counties to be able to effectively administer those funds and utilize those funds. All right, don't want to go too long, but I do want to talk a little bit about the funding allocation. So at the very end of the attachment, you will see a multi-page table with every jurisdiction, with its score and the total award amount that that jurisdiction is eligible to receive. This is the funding formula is for that score is here. So this is the formula is that all jurisdictions were scored 30% based on their current population, and 45% based on their current jobs, and 10% on their projected future population growth, and 15% on their projected future job growth. If you're wondering where those weights come from, those weights reflect basically from our PCAP, the Preliminary Climate Action Plan. We did an analysis of where do our emissions come from, and within the building sector, they come sort of in that ratio from our commercial buildings and our residential buildings. So we know some of our jurisdictions have lots of commercial building, some of them have lots of residential, and this was our effort to really utilize where the emissions are coming from as the guiding principle to figure out how are we going to distribute those funds. And because existing buildings account for more of our emissions than our projected future growth, that's why we weighted those more. The last thing to say here quickly is that the scores were then relativized, if that's a term, to the overall sort of proportionality of a jurisdiction to the region, right? So, for smaller jurisdictions, that's why those numbers are smaller, and for the larger jurisdictions, that's why those numbers are larger. The scoring tiers, there are 8 tiers, as I said, from $50,000 to $2 million. These are the maximum that a jurisdiction is eligible for over the 4-year period of this grant or subaward. And we went through a natural breaks tiering structure, so that's how we came up with where those score breaks are, to make sure that there's no jurisdiction that was very close to jumping up into the next tier or dropping down into the tier below. The award amounts were designed in these totals just to try to make it so that they could be sort of support bringing staff on, and that they could be combined in terms of partnered applications in a usable and feasible manner. So we can keep going down. We'll be working on and handling all of the reporting to EPA. We're doing our best to make sure that this is as easy to administer for our local jurisdictions as possible. So we'll be setting up the right processes and reporting criteria in the awards themselves to reduce that burden as much as possible. Section 7 is the next one I'm going to jump to. It talks about the resources and support. The website, there's a building BPC website as part of the DRCOG website. That is where all resources that for our jurisdictions will go. That's where the grant application will be accessed, and we're developing a number of resources, including an FAQ, template application documents, template budgets for each eligible use, and a number of other resources for our local jurisdictions to support them in the application process. And that should all go live, ideally, by June 2nd, which is when we're hoping to open this award opportunity. So Section 8 talks a little bit about all of the what's required for the application. I looked at the template application right now. I think it's roughly 3 pages, and that's what we're hoping to keep it to. So we're really doing our best to try to simplify this as much as possible. I'm not saying that that's what it'll look like when it's fully filled out, but on our end, that's the total number of questions we're asking y'all. So there'll have to be that letter of commitment, you know, the identification of eligible uses in the project proposal, and a budget and a timeline. That's basically all we're looking for from the application process. So I'm going to wrap up, but the timeline is the last thing I wanted to flag. Our goal is to try to get this money flowing to our jurisdictions as soon as possible. So our goal has been to open this subaward opportunity beginning on June 2nd of this year, and that will be open through ideally October 31st of this year. We will review applications on a rolling basis as we get them. It'll take us roughly, I would say, 6 weeks to 2 months to fully process all applications, bring it to the Finance and Budget Committee to approve our ability to enter into a contractual agreement with our jurisdictions, and then finish the contracting process to issue the subawards. But we're really hoping to start that process as soon as possible and wrap it up by December of this year. The last thing I will say is this subaward opportunity, if everyone took all of their money and budgeted for it fully, we would be fully obligated for all of the money that we've earmarked for jurisdictional support. We know that that's not likely going to happen as much as we would like it to. And so we are planning for a second round, a competitive round of grant application or subaward applications to open up in the spring of 2026. We will make sure that jurisdictions that did not participate in the first round will receive, extra priority in that competitive round. We do want to incentivize regional consistency and maximum participation across the region. So with that, Mr. Chair, I think I will turn it back to you.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Miao? Director Martinez.
Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple questions. First, if jurisdictions want to apply for the grant in like a joint application, and jurisdiction, for example, comes from a different scoring criteria, how would the maximum award be determined if it was a joint application between two jurisdictions of different sizes?
Thank you for that, Director. That would be sum totaled between the two. So what we are looking for with regards to joint applications is that we are hoping that we will get a lead applicant to submit the application, and in that application they will tell us what the total award amount the partnership is eligible for and how they plan on distributing the funds between the various jurisdictions.
And just one more follow-up about the scoring methodology was that something that came with the overall grant from the federal government, or was it a scoring criteria that was designed and implemented by DRCOG staff?
Yes, and so this scoring criteria was really developed in coordination with, through the workshops with our local partners. So I think starting in January, we began bringing different scoring options to those workshops. A number of different criteria were identified, including things like how old is the existing, building code in a jurisdiction? Should that receive extra criteria? What is the environmental burden for the jurisdiction in terms of their air quality exposures? So there were a number of different criteria that were identified. Due to a number of different circumstances, we ended up settling on the sort of the simplicity of this scoring criteria, and we really do feel like it fulfills the goals of our grant, as best we can, really reflecting where the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from the building sector in our region.
Thank you.
Director Flynn and Director Van Winkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a constituent nonprofit in my district that awarded a $20 million grant, totally different program. We had the 2 U.S. senators there last fall celebrating it, and the administration took over, goes in, and what kind of a risk assessment associated with this program assures us or not that it will remain at 2 allocate this year and then into spring of 20.
Thank you for the question, Director Flynn. Yes, it's been very unfortunate what's happened to a number of the different funding sources out there. However, we understand a lot of the concern regarding sort of federal funding stability. It's our opinion and sort of our feeling that I would say we feel strongly that the program is on solid ground in terms of its funding. It is fully obligated through the IRA as a statutory obligation and was not included in the proposed EPA budget cuts for 2025. And we've been able to successfully draw down from it since a very brief interruption when that first executive order in January came out. So we're really committed to carrying out, the important work that's identified in the grant agreement that we have with EPA, and are working to make sure that we fulfill the terms of that grant and stay in compliance with all of the terms and conditions of our contractual agreement with EPA.
Thank you. I understand that the best way to proceed is to proceed as though this is all going to happen the way we expect. I'm just concerned about what kind of effort or exposure or resources restrictions might invest. That might be impossible to say, I guess.
I appreciate that question again. So we have had early conversations with some of our jurisdictions that I think have raised similar concerns. Ultimately, this is a reimbursement grant, and so, it is the vendors who will be submitting the reimbursement that will be bearing the largest risk. That is not to say that there's no risk analysis for our local jurisdictions, but it is the service providers that will be bearing the largest risk.
That's it?
Yes.
Director Van Winkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And a question, and actually a couple, kind of along the same line is, what if a jurisdiction signs a letter of commitment? Does that mean the jurisdiction will have to building codes changes?
No. We are not requiring any, this is not a letter of commitment to adopt any specific piece of legislation or specific code update. We would strongly encourage our jurisdictions to consider those code updates given sort of what's happening at the state level with the low energy carbon code and sort of the WUI code that will probably force everyone to update their codes anyways. But the letter of commitment is not a commitment to any specific piece of legislation or ordinance.
And down the line, let's say jurisdictions, they sign, they get money. What if they say, man, engineers, like, let's see how the heat pump program works in other places first, and then we might adopt it. Will there be money clawed back? How would that?
So we are not intending, or we're hoping not to try to claw any money back. That's not the goal of this program. We do have a provision in the policy that is in, I want to say, project delays. So I believe that's section 6, where we would follow a similar process to I believe, what happens with, in the transportation, space, where if there's extreme undue delays, we would ask our, in the sort of project plan that's proposed, we would ask the jurisdiction to come and present to our technical committee, the oversight committee, and ultimately the board as to why and if they wanted to keep the funding. But our goal is to we understand that there might be project delays. I would highly suggest that if that is a strategy a jurisdiction was planning on taking, that they sort of budget for that in their timeline accordingly. And I think that would be fine. We could enter into a contractual agreement where, more of the money is earmarked for year 2, if people are wanted to wait and see.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Director Baer.
There we go. Now you can hear me. Thank you for the presentation, and to the committee, the Oversight Committee, Director Kondo and Director Barr and Director Douglas, and all of the staff. You guys do an amazing job. It's really incredible how much progress you make at each meeting. It's like started with literally blank paper. It's so amazing. I do have some concerns still with the population numbers. I know I've brought this up a couple of times, and I'm sorry to bring it up again. But I see that Erie's population has been, I think, updated to 36,925. And at the end of 2024, I know that Erie was over 40,000, and also that we have 7,000 entitled permits for 2025. And so I just know from staff has raised concerns to me that the disparity in population numbers, and then also in the growth, the 10% and 15% growth numbers maybe are low for the northern region. And so I just wondered if you could talk about that a little bit.
Thank you, Director Baer. So I am honestly not the expert on the numbers. The numbers come from the small area forecast that I believe our RPD team has been developing. So these are the updated numbers from the that will be included in their new small area forecast. And I don't know, Doug, if that's been published yet, or if I believe it's supposed to be published soon. Not yet. So these are, we understand there are discrepancies or differences in terms of the numbers that the jurisdictions have for themselves. I think what I would rely on here is that within the tiering of the award amounts, it would require a sum total significant discrepancy for this to actually change the ultimate score, or the tier that a jurisdiction ends up in. That's, the natural breaks that we did with regards to the tiers, I think, help insulate us from some of those discrepancies. And that's what we'll try to rely on.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that the correct numbers wouldn't bump Erie into a different award tier. I think my staff's concern is that it may be reflective of the whole northern area, and it may bump someone else into a different tier. And then also when we're looking at funding for transportation investments and things, our numbers aren't reflected as accurately as we would. So I'm relaying their message as if I know what I'm talking about, but please reach out to staff if you have questions.
Well, I thank you, Director Baer, for that. And yes, we will be having conversations about this small area forecast, and there will be appropriate time for us to have those conversations. So we thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Director Kerr.
Thank
Thank you. So I had a question. You were talking about the funding and regionally working together collaboratively. My thinking is working towards training. We up in Louisville, I mean, we recently saw an increase in new construction just because of the Marshall Fire burning, 1,000 homes in our area. So, and we saw a lot of new HVAC companies coming in. They were not Louisville-based companies necessarily, or Lafayette or Erie, but they were coming from Longmont. They were coming from Denver, coming from Brighton. And we see a lot of that. So we in Louisville are thinking, how do we ensure that the regional training is beyond just Louisville, Lafayette, Superior? It's really regional, right? We're DRCOG, the whole Denver region. So we're talking about maybe partnering with one or two people, or us in Louisville putting policy, or some other community. But how is that going to be working to better improve the education of these HVAC companies? Because I will tell you too, if we're wanting people, whether it's multifamily housing or even businesses, we have an amazing PACE program that works with this, but they will, the owners will go to an HVAC company for the advice before they come to a city council member or a member of the city staff. They'll call an HVAC company and say, what should I do? I need something new, or, is there a program? So I'm curious to know, how does this help us to work even more together instead of each of us getting our little pots of money and maybe doing little things? I'd love to kind of get your idea on how we help do that.
Thank you, Director. That's a great question, and one of the biggest challenges that we are very aware of and are definitely trying to address through this program. So my answer is two-part. One, there is the workforce development program that is being managed by my colleague Clay McComb, and that program is really intended to provide standardized training to make sure that we have quality installations happening, because we know that there was a lot of experience within, with the Marshall Fire and afterwards with non-ideal outcomes and non-ideal installations, and people feeling really burned by that process. So that program has a number of different aspects to train up the workforce. I believe Clay says that roughly less than 10% of the HVAC workforce is really trained on these types of installations. There's going to be support and advising for those contractors, and there will be training opportunities, through different workforce development sites. Additionally, for the incentives program, which will be rolling out money into the jurisdictions, which includes full retrofits for income qualified homes, as well as an incentives program, we are being very intentional in terms of trying to figure out the right way to do quality assurance on the installations, so that we're going out and we're making sure that we're doing, that my program is making sure that our building inspectors are all trained and they can go out and they can do the right type of quality insurance, and that as part of the incentives program itself, someone's going out and checking those installations to make sure those are done to their appropriate standards. And finally, I will say that I really think the peer network, convening all of our codes officials and buildings officials on a semi-monthly basis, is going to be one of the best supports we have to make sure that we really standardize operations across the region. I think that helps us get away from the only doing consistency across 2 to 3 cities. We really want to make sure that we're creating the space for them to talk about what are the challenges, who are the HVAC contractors that you're seeing that you're having a lot of problem with. How can we share that information? So I do see our program and that peer network as really providing a space for our buildings officials to really work together to drive towards that regional consistency.
I really appreciate that, and really good explanation, and it just another reason why we all owe you and the rest of the DRCOG staff a huge thank you for the heavy lift. That answer was more thorough than I was expecting, and that's impressive. But I think your point of knowing that there are issues currently within the industry, we find locally at least a desire to encourage the decarbonization to its maximum level, and you're specifically focusing on the heat pumps, furnaces, but there's also a concern, you're talking about funding for income qualified people, that right now at least, and maybe it is the very poor installation, it is more expensive in the winter for people to utilize the new technology. And it's difficult to say, this is what we should be recommending for people on very low fixed incomes, and then not have them have any additional relief other than you got it for free, but now you have to pay more per month to run it. And I guess my overall point is, how can we also manage that, whether it's demanding or encouraging through requirements, improve technology before we put that into people's homes? I'm thinking of like a lot of multifamily housing, to ensure that the efficiency is there to measure with cost. It's not just, it's great, your greenhouse gas emitting less, but in December, when you can barely afford to buy your children, gifts for the holiday, now you need to pay $200 more a month for your heating bill pick. I don't want to put our residents in that position.
That's another great question, and definitely a concern that we talk about a lot on the decarb team. I will say we don't have the whole answer. I mean, there are times and there are buildings where full electrification may end up being more expensive. And what I will say is we have one of the first aspects of our research budget is to go out and to do a building stock analysis for the different types of buildings that exist in our region, so that we can design the incentives and retrofits program to be responsive to basically what would be the biggest wins for those buildings, right? I don't think that necessarily we are 100% committed to, we would certainly not be forcing full electrification on a building or a homeowner that where it would be to their economic detriment. And I think there are opportunities for partial electrification, and there's opportunities within the policies to promote general energy efficiency that allows for multiple compliance pathways, that pushes us towards electric preferred or electric only, helps us get there, but doesn't necessarily force it on people. And I think also in the policy space, we will be thinking this through with regards to how do you retrofit existing multifamily, especially existing low-income multifamily. What are their compliance periods? How do we find and give them more money, but also how do we give them a longer time to come into compliance and reach those benchmarking standards?
Director Spot.
I'm a director now. I wish, not quite. But I appreciate the compliment. I wanted to just
Manager.
add on that we have kind of two other cards in our pocket. The first is that we really are looking at buildings holistically, and that the first step is efficiency, right? So the first step is air sealing and insulation, right? That benefits your home no matter what fuel you're using, right? And so that can drive down your costs. The second that we see on the horizon here is Xcel Energy adopting a beneficial electrification rate. That is, if your home is electric, they give you a cheaper electricity rate. That is already adopted in Minnesota, which is another Xcel territory, and is on their calendar to evaluate and potentially adopt next year. So we'll be obviously following that very closely. That's a real secret bullet for us. And then the other, to your first question, I just wanted to quickly mention that you will be seeing in 2 weeks a proposal for DRCOG to consider assisting the state adopt HVAC licensure. Right now, there's a statewide licensure for electricians, there's a statewide licensure for plumbers, HVAC technicians. It's the wild, wild west out there. Every jurisdiction has a patchwork. Some don't regulate it at all. It really makes sense to make sure that everyone operating in the state of Colorado is doing the work well.
Thank you very much.
And I saw a thumbs up back there from the Arapahoe County Public Works Director, so I'm just giving me signals. It's like baseball or something. Thank you. Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Meow. Oh, I'm sorry. We have to If there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the Building Policy Collaborative Jurisdictional Support Subawards Policy.
Motion to approve the Building Policy Collaborative, it's blocking the rest of the word. I missed it. Jurisdictional Support Subawards Policy.
Excellent. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Again, thank you, Mr. Meow. We're going to move on to item number 11 in your packet. This is informational briefings, Transportation Improvement Program, potential programming year adjustments. We'll hear from Manager Todd Cottrell.
All right, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, it's time to turn our attention to the tip, and I seem to always do that around here. So, here is a small update that we're thinking. Essentially, we are going through a process and thinking about making some sort of one-time adjustments. And this evening, again, this is just for discussion, no action, but wanted to go through the process of talking through adjusting the years of the next tip. So obviously, we'll explain that as we go through. As a result of that, we would need to program federal fiscal year 28, and of course, what are the next steps leading up through that? So why make this adjustment at all? So obviously, we all know that the TIP implements the regional transportation plan, especially here in the Denver region. The TIP that we have implements the 2050 RTP that is embedded within federal law also. We have consistently done that since this was part of the law. I will say in the last application, we've continued to strengthen that through the TIP application by including the RTP investment priorities. In fact, again, in that last application, those were weighted at 50%. Historically, both of the TIP and the RTP have had similar adoption timelines. Now, this was never planned. This is just one of those things that sort of happens over time. The TIP, we create a new TIP every 2 years with a call for projects every 4 years. RTP is adopted every 4 years. Sometimes those schedules are off a little bit and sometimes they sync up. That's typically what has happened, at least in the recent past, which isn't necessarily a good thing because we have run across situations on agendas, and maybe you've noticed this, where there is both an RTP and a TIP up for adoption at the same time. And if you were very close in noticing, we would purposely put the RTP above the action on the TIP. Therefore, because there are projects that are contingent on TIP funding that is contingent on the RTP being adopted. So what this does is it does create situations where it is a little bit harder on staff. It is definitely harder on sponsors just because it's really unknown at the time, depending on the timing, if the new TIP investments are going to be based on the most updated and recent RTP priorities that are going to be adopted. And so what we would like to do, at least going forward, is create a situation where we are having RTP projects at least set before we end up doing these TIP calls for projects. So we have developed a proposal. Essentially, what the situation we have and what I was saying earlier is we adopt a TIP every 2 years, call for projects every 4. Just last month, I was up here and we had you adopted a TIP covering 2026 to 29. Carrying that forward another 2 years, the next TIP that we would bring to you would be 28 to 31. However, we certainly would like to push that out 1 year to cover 29 to 32. And this would simply allow the 2050 regional transportation process that is currently ongoing to be completed before we go through the next TIP cycle. Of course, that would create a new timeline for the TIP. So beginning early next year, we would go through some TIP policy discussions. Ultimately, we would amend the policy document, followed in 2027 with the calls for projects, and go through the document creation, public review process, and adoption covered in 2028, to begin the TIP starting in 2029. However, what that does is creates federal fiscal year 28 without having projects selected. So if you recall, and you went through the entire process for our last TIP calls for projects, which were a lot, we programmed 2022 all the way through 27, with the natural assumption that our next TIP would cover that starting in 2028. However, if we switch to a TIP covering 29 to 32, that would leave 2028 to be covered using a process, and we are suggesting a modified waitlist process that we'll go through here. Just giving an overview of what we consider that process to be, we would start this later this year. The earliest that would be is perhaps late July, maybe even later than that. And it would consist of two steps. So first, we would go through our waitlist programming. This is established within our TIP. Every TIP carries that forward, including both the protocol on how it's conducted and the actual wait lists themselves. So we would go through that process. Then followed up with a new call for projects. At this time, we estimate a $90 million would be available, and we'll go through a little bit in detail with that. Then, of course, we are going to be looking for both TAC, RTC, and board action. And again, we'll follow that up at a later time. So just going through these steps a little bit more in detail. First, about the waitlist programming. So like I said, there is existing policy within our 26 to 29 TIP, so we would follow that, including the waitlist. Just some quick reminders about that policy. Sponsors who were on that list must have delivered the scope that was submitted for the funding that is listed along with that project. So no additional DRCOG funding would be available. However, since those projects have been on the list a little bit longer than probably intended, we would definitely ask for a new cost estimate to be required. This is solely based on the sponsor's decision to accept that funding or not. We are not going to have to go back through the forum process to seek their action and recommendation to move forward. We also think it's prudent to begin with the regional share wait list first before jumping into the 8 individual sub-regional lists. This is because there are possibilities where a regional share project may impact a decision on the local level within the sub-regional list. And then as soon as the regional share list is done, we would then jump into the sub-regional wait list process. A key thing, and we'll describe that here in a second, is we definitely are going to need a step 2. So once we go through the wait list process, if any unprogrammed funding remains in any one of the forums, they will move on to step 2. Step 2 being a new call for projects. So this is one of the items that eventually, if everyone is satisfied with, we would be seeking an exception to move forward. And again, this would be just for federal fiscal year 28 funding. So that might throw a little bit of a wrench into the situation, especially if you're thinking 2.5 years down the road. Just a few things I think that we are going to point out at this time, with definitely some additional information coming later. These will be shortened calls, so probably in the 2-week time frame. We are going to lean on the previous applications and the criteria. Sponsors would be totally open to submitting a brand new project. Again, this is just 1 year worth of funding. Or if they would like to sort of continue the phase of a next project, they could certainly do that too. Then of course, we don't know how this process is going to play out between the wait list and new projects. So certainly there is that chance that we may have to narrow eligibility just solely based on the funding types that are available. Funding. This is a big question mark at this moment because our federal transportation bill only goes through the end of federal fiscal year 26. Historically speaking, what we probably will end up seeing is a continuing resolution for either 1 or 2 years that would simply take FY 26 funding and carry it forward without a increase for maybe 1 or 2 years. We've also heard there's been discussions of a new federal transportation bill and all the rumblings with that. So honestly, at this point, it's totally up in the air. But with everything that we know at this very moment, or at least when this information was put together, we expect $90 million may be available. One of the first things that we would do is take off $11.5 million off the top for the set-asides. That $11.5 million is equal to 1 year of each set-aside at the current funding level, so that would just continue that into FY 28. Then, of course, beyond that, we would have the 80-20 split, 80% for the sub-regional share and 20% for the regional share. That sort of breaks down for those individual sub-regions with the totals that you see. Now, I certainly would caution you to write, do not write these down in ink or anything. These will change. It's certainly possible there may be small adjustments. It's certainly possible there may be larger adjustments. It is always a moving target, but this is the best estimate that we have at this time. So what's next? We're looking for your feedback. We have already been to the Transportation Advisory Committee. Next month, we will go to the RTC and look for any direction that they might give. We are thinking that we might end up bringing this back to you in a couple of months, and then hopefully to kick off this process a little bit later after that, again, starting in late July at the earliest. That's sort of where we're at right now. And again, happy to take any comments or questions, looking for any feedback before eventually we bring this back to you for some sort of action.
Director Dyack.
Hey, Todd. So I was sort of thinking about the wait list programming, and can you confirm that it's your proposal that you want to work off of the existing wait lists and not allow subregions to kind of reconsider our priorities or to add new projects and re-score them? Is that correct?
According to policy, yes. These wait lists were created out of the third and fourth calls to create the 24 to 27 tip. So in all reality, these projects that are on the wait list are not entirely old. But again, using the established process and policy that we have, when funds are available, we would go to the wait list first until we have a new tip with a new call for projects.
So you're kind of looking at this like it's an extension of the existing tip. It's not a 1 year standalone.
It is yes. Within the 26 to 29 tip, we're looking at it like we're just programming the next year, FY 28.
Okay. No, I mean, I just, to me, I don't know enough right now. I need to process this, but from a tax standpoint, I want to make sure that they're okay with it. Again, concerns priorities changes, or what if a subregion doesn't have any wait list projects, and if they don't, and they can go out and find new projects, then I would think it would be appropriate to kind of have everyone to kind of reconsider that. But again, I also understand that if we have waitlisted projects, those should be considered as well, or potentially prioritized. But again, that will be up to a subregion on a case-by-case basis, or subregion by subregion basis.
Right, and I think the advantage of proposing this type of system is obviously we would go through the wait list first, and it's up to the individual sponsor whether they want to accept or not. So if there's an outdated priority or costs have changed or the scope has changed, they have the right to refuse those funds. If there's a leftover balance, we would simply move into a new call for projects where, as a forum, you could have a discussion to say, we are only going to put forward these types of projects, or maybe this one project, or it could sort of be a free-for-all where everyone within the forum is submitting what they'd like within the budget that's available.
Next up, Director Levy.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Todd. I also want to make sure that I'm understanding what you're proposing. So in the example of Boulder County, it looks like 6.2 million, you know, if things work the way you think they're going to work. So then I go to table 16, the Boulder County Forum Subregional Share Wait List. We would in our, well, we actually wouldn't meet, but it would just go down the list until you've totaled 6.2 million in these projects as they're currently ordered on this list?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes. And then if there's leftover funds, then we would issue a call for projects. Now, I will speak to those involved with the Adams County Forum. You do not have a wait list currently, so you will be going right to the call for projects.
So what, just sticking here on, I mean, not that Boulder's just as an example of it, though, I could see where we may want a chance in Boulder County first to look at this and talk amongst ourselves around, the first thing on the list, the 2.8 million for 30th Street multimodal improvements, et cetera. You know, we're not quite ready for that. We'd rather reprioritize ourselves. And that might be a little more, I don't know, you know, might save you some time of just one by one contacting and saying no for whatever reasons, the kinds of things that we actually talk about together in our subregional forum.
Right. And honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, with having those internal discussions. I think we would still abide by policy to contact that first sponsor in the list and go right down the list. It may be ending up that there have been some inside discussions where some already know there might be some projects that are skipped over on purpose to maybe achieve a grander vision or a grander project. We can't stop that from happening, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that happening. It's just following through the policy that we've all agreed to is to go down the wait list by each sponsor and have them give the opportunity to accept that funding or not.
And I just want to clarify that at some point in that process, there would be an opportunity to update the costs.
Yes, and I think that's one of the things that we have seen over the last few years is, I mean, obviously we would request new cost estimates, which may or may not change how things are done on the local level, but I would assume that if a sponsor is thinking about accepting funding from this project or not, they would have already gone through that new cost estimate. So it shouldn't be that large of a lift for each of those individual sponsors with projects on the list.
Thank you, Director Spear.
Thank you, and thanks, Director Dyak and Director Levy, because you asked some of my questions too. One of the things I'm wondering, if we're shifting the policy anyway to accommodate this transition, could we allow the subregions for this 1 year to decide to work off their wait list or do their own? I think that speaks to your point, Director Levy, of just giving the subregions a little bit more agency in deciding without having to do these kind of backdoor conversations that you know, about who may pull their project, and do we want to try to do that just to allow everybody to come together in their forum and really have that conversation? Is there an opportunity for that if we are having to make some adjustments to the policy anyway?
I certainly think there would be, and I think it can go one of two ways. Is that can happen sort of in the Boulder County example regardless, and we could still go through and ask each sponsor one by one. Or if we are going to go through and, you know, make exceptions to the policy, there is that potential to make that happen. I think either way, it would still achieve the ultimate direction which we're looking for.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I may just add on that, yeah, Todd did get to it there at the end related to it. Ultimately, this is your policy, right? And if you may want to make exceptions to that policy, you're certainly entitled to do that. I think what staff was trying to do was trying not to disturb the policy as much as possible. But seriously, I think, flexibility is yours with regards to how you want to handle it.
Director Spear, and then I also see that Director Papsdorf is.
Just to follow up on that, at least my perspective is that having it be the case where the subregions can have that conversation among them and decide what it is they want to do together as a group, that to me feels a little bit better than if it's something that's they're having to coordinate in advance so that they can answer the right way to, this question of, do you want the funding or not? Sponsor, do you want to pull your project? It seems more transparent and more collaborative.
Ron?
Thank you, Ron Peps, for the record, Ron Pepsdorf. I want to reiterate what Doug said. We were trying to do a light touch on this approach because it really is just a bridge, right? We see this as kind of a bridge, and so we were trying to stay as close as possible to existing policy that you all have adopted. Doug's absolutely right. This is your policy, and you can adopt whatever policy you want. I think there's some important considerations too, right? The funds that you award through the TIP are awarded to specific jurisdictions for projects. They're not awarded to the sub-regional forums. The forums are the important place where the projects are evaluated and where the recommendations come from, but the awards are to the project sponsors. So I think part of your consideration might be, how much do you want to give to the forums to change those priorities that are articulated in those existing wait lists and sort of upset a particular jurisdiction who's been awarded TIP funds or had a project prioritized on the wait list with the expectation that if new money became available, they could be queued up to be able to fund their project. And I think that's part of the deliberation and part of why we were trying to stay pretty close to the existing policy. But again, we're here trying to get feedback to try to find the right approach for just this bridge year so that we can build the next big 4-year TIP on the priorities that you articulate in the next regional transportation plan.
Additional questions? Yes. Saw it back in the corner, sorry. Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem, but don't tell the mayor I said that. What if you were not part of DRCOG prior to a wait list being established? That would be my question.
That is a good question. We will have discussions and get back to you on that.
Are you participating in a forum, in a sub-regional forum?
We're still trying to get our bearings on everything because we just really started working with DRCOG very, very recently. So I don't know how to answer that question because we're just starting to get organized.
I'm understanding that you would be in Jefferson County's sub-regional transportation forum, so we can try to make that connection.
Yeah, and if I can add, technically you're within the MPO. Whether you've participated or not, it's, I think, a different conversation. So you're certainly eligible for funds, so therefore, if we got to the stage within that forum where there was a call for projects, yes, you would certainly be eligible.
Director Maurer?
Thank you. So, Todd, I don't know if there's been other forum meetings, but we recently had a meeting with our forum and talking about projects and so forth. Or maybe it's just my public works director. I get confused. They all just kind of blend. But it was kind of like I understood that there was a technical advisory committee meeting and it kind of went through some of this. I have that right? And they kind of made some decisions, and I guess my question is, were they okay with going with this process?
Yes.
I know our group was.
Yes, we did have the DRCOG Transportation Advisory Committee meeting, and they were okay with this proposal. I'm unaware if any of your forum kind of technical committees have gone through discussions. We might have mentioned it a few times. There has not been any in-depth discussions at the forum levels. I do know most of the forums have recently been going through the CDOT-4P discussions and not necessarily the DRCOG TIP discussions.
Which kind of just mixes everything all up there.
Sorry.
Director Starker.
Thank you, Chair. So
just let me make sure that I kind of maybe understand this. We've got $90 million overall,
Correct.
and,
Yes.
and we're doing that an 80-20 split to the sub-regional forum and the regional forum?
Yes.
So that divides the dollars there, and then we're going to the regional wait list by priority to spend those monies if those sponsors want to go forward with their projects?
That is correct.
And the same on the sub-regional forum basis?
That is correct.
Perfect.
The only thing I would add is we would like to do the regional share first, just because there may be impacts to the sub-regional share individual lists on the forum.
Okay. Yeah.
Other than that, yes, that is correct.
Okay, but the allocation's already kind of set at the start?
That is correct.
Perfect, thank you.
Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Cottrell.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to item number 12 on our agenda, Regional Multimodal Freight Plan Update. We've got Mr. Cole Nieder here, who's a planner with the Transportation Planning and Operations. Mr. Nieder.
Okay, good evening, members of the board. Thank you for your time this evening. My name's Cole Nieder. I am DRCOG's Senior Transit Planner and the Project Manager for maintaining and updating DRCOG's Regional Multimodal Freight Plan. This plan is an incredibly helpful tool for guiding freight-related planning and infrastructure investments throughout our region. And between this year and next, we are updating the document, originally started in 2020. And I wanted to give you a primer on that project today. So just to set a quick agenda for the presentation, I wanted to cover just a couple different topics in our presentation today. First, a background and purpose of DRCOG's freight planning efforts within the region, the goals and different components of the current plan, and then a closer look at what we're doing as part of the 2025 update as well. Just for background, the Regional Multimodal Freight Plan was developed by DRCOG. It's the inaugural freight plan in 2020. And it guides freight planning for us across multiple modes that includes highway, air, rail, and pipeline. It supports infrastructure investment decisions and also aligns freight-related planning goals with our MetroVision regional transportation plan. Our original plan was to generally update this every 4 to 5 years, so we are on that timeline as our goals evolve and different freight-related best practices and also technology and our data that we collect advances as well. CDOT recently also updated their statewide freight plan, and so this is a very good effort to undertake for DRCOG, good parallel efforts, and we're not duplicating any data collection efforts or anything like that. I always like putting this slide up here. It kind of showcases how DRCOG's regional freight planning efforts interacts with our partners at the state and federal level. First, FHWA's National Freight Strategic Plan that sets national freight goals that align with different legislation that our federal partners pass and identifies challenges with our national freight system. And then there's CDOT's statewide freight plan, which provides a comprehensive freight system overview. It also identifies critical freight corridors, so think of I-25, I-70, and I-76, for example, and then also establishes strategic goals that provide a roadmap for different projects, policies, and programs and initiatives to be implemented. And then there's us at the regional level. DRCOG focuses on the unique needs of our own metropolitan area. And through our planning efforts, we assess congestion in urban corridors, identify bottlenecks occurring in different distribution networks, and we also assess the effects of freight movement on our local communities. This is a bit of a typo I want to clarify. This is program goals, and these are the goals that we set forth in our existing freight plan, and that helps our plan align with different federal guidance. While we might modify these as part of our plan update process, these will, and they're part of the 2020 plan, they will at least serve as a starting point for our study going forward. Just to give a quick overview of these, first it's to engage regional stakeholders and businesses. We also want to educate and support local planning efforts through better data collection, data analysis, and input. We also want to position DRCOG and our local and member governments for freight-related funding opportunities at the federal and state levels as well. And then a big one that we'll talk a little bit in more detail on the next slide is to align our plan with federal guidance and federal requirements that are levied on the state. So like the statewide freight plan, we want to adhere to the requirements that they adhere to as part of their plan. And so we are responsible for maintaining comprehensive system-level data sets for use in local plans. Also facilitating different coordination opportunities. So think of our participation in the statewide freight advisory committee, and then also different workshops to connect us with our private partners. And then also maintaining a project selection criterion as well. So as you can see up here, we do, in our current plan, we do about half of those activities at the moment. And so it sets a good kind of baseline and understanding of our existing conditions with freight movement in our region. Maintaining that project selection criteria for different freight bottleneck reduction and also multimodal connectivity is important. And then playing more of a direct role in assisting our local governments in how we provide feedback on their comprehensive land use plans and how freight might affect those directives as well. And just to go over some of the existing plan activities and components that we do to meet our planning goals. So these are just a few examples of the activities that we have completed during the first iteration of the freight plan and what we plan on updating going forward. One of the big things here is collecting baseline information and working with CDOT as well to collect data to influence local plans and how we allocate our dollars as well. I want to go into a little bit more detail on that. That is one of our most significant responsibilities is in collecting and modeling different freight-related data. And just as a few examples, this includes tonnage and value of commodities by different mode, tonnage of goods flowing in and out of our region, and then the types of goods that are flowing in and out of our region and within from each commodity sector. We also conduct analysis on freight industry clusters, and that entails different employment statistics, important origin destination analysis, and then the clustered location of different freight businesses. Locating those clusters and how trucks and modeling how trucks move in and out of those clusters and where they're delivering different goods and services. From those locations, it gives us a really good idea of how we can forecast the future and ongoing strain on our roadways and our freight network as well. So using the data that we collect, we also start beginning to assess our different network needs and challenges and shortcomings within our existing plan. Our collected data allows us to maintain a truck reliability index, identify different truck-specific safety hotspots or areas of issue. And then we also inventory different and work with CDOT to inventory different truck parking availability and identify factors that lead to congestion. We also take a qualitative approach to the issues that our region faces. We host different stakeholder engagement forums, conduct different survey research, and also build off the statewide research that has been completed by CDOT and their statewide plan to ensure that we are maintaining connected with our local and member governments. So I do want to go into kind of a high-level detail then of what we plan on including in our freight plan update and how we plan on expanding the plan as well. For updating the plan, we do have a couple new activities that we're going to complete in the upcoming year. This includes a better assessment of municipal policies on freight and goods movement. So if local governments have different policies available specific to freight, or how our regional freight plan assesses affects their transportation network. We are also going to produce more specific freight performance measures and establish a concrete framework for evaluating projects and how we set our regional priorities as they relate to freight as well. And these are some interesting additions that we make as well as our plans, over the course of a plan's life cycle, technology advances and trends change. And so we will be spending a good portion of our plan identifying and showcasing best practices in different technologies that we can use, and also our specific approaches to final mile freight delivery and final mile freight movement, which has definitely become more of a topic of focus, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. And the big thing that we want to focus on, like I said before, we have a really good understanding of our existing conditions within our region, something with the new plan. Going forward, I think that our primary task with this freight plan update is to establish that framework and identify specific projects, programs, or policies. These activities can show how we can kind of transition from just a planning and existing conditions document to something that will actually assist with implementation and how we allocate our funds going forward. And so with that project priority framework in place, we can better prepare and decide how to spend our federal transportation dollars. We can also use these metrics to assess how our projects are making a difference with the region and where we are putting our money is actually working going forward as well. And then this is a high-level timeline of the freight plan update. We have just started and we are well underway with our data collection processes. We plan on, within the next couple of months, focusing on stakeholder outreach and engagement. We'll be conducting a DRCOG specific survey for this plan, which is new. We were usually piggybacking off of CDOT's survey research. We'll be doing that in addition to their research that they did for the statewide plan. We'll also be doing a more comprehensive analysis on different land use components from our local governments and specific market and modeling analysis as well. And then in 2026, we'll be finalizing the prioritization framework and using a heavy amount of stakeholder engagement and working sessions for that. And then providing implementation recommendations and, of course, adopting the updated version of our freight plan as well. So this is kind of a informational session, but I also want it to be a discussion session as well. The reason we're bringing this to you right now is to just give you a primer on what our plan, how our plan interacts with the region as it exists now and what we plan on adding to it as well. So any feedback on that, any suggestions would be appreciated. Thank you.
Questions, Director Mulvey.
Thank you. This is of great interest to me for a number of reasons. My question now is, when you talk about the modeling of the existing traffic conditions and such, when you say a truck, what size truck are you referring to?
So there's 3 categories of trucks that we're planning on focusing on, and it ranges from light duty to final mile delivery. I'm going to say medium duty, and then heavy duty trucks as well. We don't differentiate with hazardous materials. We don't have the capacity to do so, and that's CDOT's role as well, and they have that in their plan. Any relevant data to our region that they have will include in ours as well, but that's generally how we plan on approaching the different sections or different buckets of those.
Thank you.
Director Douglas, online.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I caught my eye, a lot of these, well, not a lot, there's quite a few pictures in here of Commerce City. Because we do have a lot of trucking within our city and transportation wise. Does this include rail?
Yes, so as part of the multimodal freight plan, we do highway, rail, air, and pipeline. And the photos on this presentation are credited to CDOT.
Okay, because Highway 85 corridor, and now we have warehouses and truck terminals where they bring in product and they exchange and then move out. So we have a lot of happening on 104th and 120th. And so we're looking at a near future change on Highway 85, and then those streets that go across Highway 85, and trying to really get grade separation. And if this modeling is done right, that could help us get money from the state as well, so we could get that done, because otherwise it's great to highlight these areas, but if there's not a plan in place to actually move those vehicles in a safe manner, that's not gonna help Climber City out.
Absolutely. So that's one of the things that we're planning on putting additional focus on in this freight plan is those different freight clusters and how they've evolved over time. And then we also put a lot of stock into how we forecast and model that data out as well. We have consultant assistants to put that together and multiple data sets that we've been using as well. So what we want is that specific priority framework, and we view that as a good opportunity when you're putting, or a local or member government is putting together a grant application for a grade crossing improvement, for example, to our federal partners. They can include our plan and our specific metrics in that to assist in that application as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Director Kondo.
Thank you. Cole, this may be a mechanics question, but if you'll bear with me. So when CDOT does their analysis, are they actually tracking each individual truck, like by an RFID tag or GPS? Any way to describe this?
We use the Locus software, which delineates it by census track specifically. We cannot track one specific truck, and there's security reasons behind that. But when we receive the data, it is kind of generalized into a different when we're doing origin destination analysis is put into just kind of a generalized group, and then that data is anonymized. So we can't have a specific truck, but if there's a trend there, that will show up in the data that we collect as well. That's kind of a balance too between how at a macro level we can go, because some of the data, once you get past the census track, is no longer available for those security reasons. So that's just something as we're going and progressing with the plan update, we have to determine what type of data and how we look at it is most useful.
Gotcha. Just to kind of give you a sense of where my mind was going was, you think about some of the accidents, whether it's the lumber truck that crashes coming off of Dead Man's Curve, or, all the truck congestion that happens going up on the I-70 corridor, especially during the wintertime. So I was just wondering if the granularity of the data allows for, figuring out where are those bottlenecks, or for that matter, maybe there's a design of a road or just driver behaviors that are unsafe, and that then helps inform how you're creating your freight plan.
Definitely. So the outcome would be the priority corridors that we come forth with, and that would come down to, at a high level, congestion, truck time reliability, and truck safety, the occurrences of accidents on our roadways as well. There's going to be more metrics that go into that, and that is, again, something that as the plan progresses that we're going to refine going forward. But as you can see on this presentation as well, that data is often between 2016 and 2018, so we have to go through the process of updating that too.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was just looking on your graphic there on slide 11. It was interesting to see that I-70 is green going westbound, so I would assume that's outdated or old information.
Director Lloyd.
Thank you. Somebody mentioned the I-70 ski traffic, and I just wanted to encourage all my colleagues to allow Clear Creek and Gilpin counties to join the MPO, because we certainly could use your help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Lloyd. That is an item that will be coming up through channels, and we'll be considering that at some point this year, I believe. Other questions? For Mr. Nieder, sorry about that. All right, thank you, Cole, appreciate it. We're gonna move on to one of my favorite presentations every year. This is our Bike to Work Day 2025 update. We've got Nisha Okshagundam. Nisha Mokshagundam. So, Thank you. Yeah. My heart's in it.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction, and this is actually also one of my favorite nights too, talking about Bike to Work Day with people who are so excited and supportive of the event. So my name is Nisha Mokshagundam. As Director Conklin did an excellent job of pronouncing, and I manage the Way to Go program here at DRCOG. I do just want to share Way to Go is a free commute options program, and I'll talk a little bit about what we do in the context of Bike to Work Day. I think many of you are familiar with our program, but really our mandate is to reduce single occupant vehicle use and to get people into more sustainable transportation modes. And we do this in a variety of ways, but I think our most high visibility and obviously the most fun way we achieve this is through Bike to Work Day, which is an annual event that is coming up on June 25th, which is a Wednesday, so please make sure you mark your calendars. And speaking of calendars, I will have some copy for you if you have access to your jurisdictional calendars. We do hope that you will get this information over to your public information team. To advance, uh-oh. Oh, while we're figuring this out, I can kind of keep going. I'm happy to kind of talk through what we'll be covering today on the agenda. So as I mentioned, we'll talk about Bike to Work Day, we'll talk about the Way to Go program, but really the reason I'm here is to give you all some tips on how you can help support Bike to Work Day and get the word out about the event. To have frozen just on my profile photo. Clearly doing everything you should be. That's fine. There are a couple of slides I do want to show you, but I'm happy to sort of walk through what the event is and just some highlights of it. And really, like I mentioned, goal tonight is to get you all involved in the event. So I will just share a little bit about Bike to Work Day. It is an annual event that takes place on the fourth Wednesday of every June. So I think a lot of you have participated in it in the past, but really our goal here is to create a fun community opportunity for commuters to swap a ride in their car with a ride on their bike on the day of the event. We know that not everybody is traveling to a physical office these days, so we really like to update our talking point to include non-commute trips as well as biking to work. So we tell people if you have to run an errand, if you have a recreational trip, maybe you need to drop off your kids at school, try that on a bike instead. And what that does is it removes a lot of vehicles from the road and it helps improve traffic congestion as well as air quality within the region, which I mentioned is really the primary goal of the Way to Go program. So I do also want to mention that our region's Bike to Work Day is the second largest in the nation. So the more we grow the program, the more we have something on the Bay Area, which I love. I think we're much better than they are in general. So let's keep those numbers moving. I do see that many of you have a poster on your desk for the Bike to Work Day event. Let me Thank you so much. See, this is extremely helpful. We don't even need a presentation back.
All right. I will say that the Bay Area does not have winter bike to work day.
No.
So, at least I don't think they do. Yeah. Bike to bog? In the fog day, yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. I know.
All right, perfect. Here we are. So we are going to be talking a little bit about our Bike to Work Day theme, which this year is called Ace Your Ride. So wanted to talk a little bit about the process that we undertake when we come up with this theme. So every year, my team here at Way to Go, along with the designers, participate in an internal focus group, and we really talk about any trends that we might have observed in biking and transportation, or if we see any common trends within events in the region, we try to incorporate some of those best practices and findings into our Bike to Work Day theme. So this year we decided on the theme Ace Your Ride for a couple of reasons. First, I just want to, mention that whenever we talk to Bike to Work Day participants, they always tell us that the number one reason they participate is because it's a really fun event. I think that playing card imagery, the game imagery is really, I think, a great alignment with that idea. So it kind of brings us back to a time where we're having fun, whether that's past or present. And also by encouraging people to ace your rides, I want to emphasize that Way to Go is here to help commuters. We want to make it easy for people to ace their rides and have a successful bike commute on the day of Bike to Work Day so that they can then carry on this best practice throughout their annual commutes. Also, I just really like the playing card imagery. I think biking is really fun, and as I mentioned, the feedback we get every year is Bike to Work Day is fun too. So we thought there was a really great and obvious parallel there. So I did want to talk a little bit about our 2024 numbers, and this will help set up a little bit of context as to what we're trying to achieve in terms of participation for this upcoming June event. So I'll leave you to kind of look at these numbers. So far, we have about 2,300 registrations for riders on the website, which is pretty consistent with what we see year to year. We've got 94 registered stations, though, which is a bit higher than we typically see this time of year, so really excited about that. And we have 553 businesses who are currently participating in the Business Challenge, actively promoting Bike to Work Day among their employees. I'm really impressed with that number. I do want to mention that there was an increase in rider registration between 2023 and 2024. We had about 18,000 participants in 2023, and that increased by about 1,000 last year. If we can keep up those numbers, we should see about 20,000 people participate this year, so please help us get those numbers up. We could also use your help encouraging member governments to host stations. We last year had 256 stations. As I mentioned, we are currently tracking at 94. We haven't added those Boulder stations yet, so we're anticipating a good high number. A lot of station organizers who have managed one station in the past are managing a couple this year. So really excited to see that trend continue to improve. I will say we saw a slight decrease between 2023 and 2024. We saw 10 fewer stations in 2024. I attribute that to many station organizers choosing to partner up last year and host what we call super stations, where cyclists can visit and actually talk to multiple vendors. Those are really exciting. We always have one each year at Civic Center Station, and the energy is really positive. It's a really fun event. I also want to mention that we saw an enormous jump in business challenge participation between 2023 and 2024. We saw a 26% increase between those 2 years. So again, really pleased that we are tracking pretty high this year. We've got 553, as I mentioned. So we're already doing better than we did in 2024. So really excited to kind of see those metrics. And the last thing I want to point out in this slide is this 25% number. It is really encouraging to see that 25% of our participants participated for the first time. So that means that we're capturing new audiences and we're talking to people who have not done this event in the past about how they can make biking sort of an integral part of their daily commute. I want to just spend a moment talking about Way to Go's communication strategies. I am going to ask all of you to help us augment that, because if you are helping us communicate about the event, it really widens our reach significantly. As many of you have probably seen in your inbox, we do quite a bit of email targeting. We have about 80,000 users who we email Bike to Work Day information to during each campaign. And we do a lot of segmentation so that after a rider registers, after a station registers, we're actually giving them very practical information on how they can make the day of the event a success. We've also been pushing organic and paid social media to promote rider and station registration. And we did launch business challenge media starting in March. So again, looking at some of those participation numbers, it is very encouraging to see all of those enrollments. So I also hope that while you all are out and about, you see some of our Bike to Work Day out of home marketing. So you might see it on a bus wrap. You might see it in a bus interior. We've got quite a few ads kind of floating around. I always love when I'm walking through my neighborhood and I see a Bike to Work Day poster in a storefront. That is something I will ask all of you to do, is grab some of those posters, distribute them among businesses within your region or even in your own workplace. If you do see any of our stuff in the wild, take a picture of it, post it on social media, and link to our biketoworkday.co registration site. Again, it's really helpful for us to have all of you advocate for this fun event. Finally, I'm going to ask you all to help us get the word out by talking about the very cool prizes that we're offering this year. Every year we offer some really great prizes. I'm really excited about this year because we wanted to showcase the region. So we'll be doing one grand prize. We are going to be sending one winner for a 3-night stay up in Estes Park. And we're also going to be offering them a complimentary rental of 2 foldable e-bikes so that they can explore the town. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy that. So definitely in your marketing and your promotions, please mention that that's a fun opportunity that people can take advantage of. We're also going to be giving away Pocampo bags, Bike to Work Day merchandise. We've got Colorado Rapids tickets. We've got a skincare package over in the Highlands. So really doing quite a bit to highlight all of the great businesses within our region and to incentivize people to sign up by offering cool prizes. Another way we could use your help is help connect Way to Go with local employers. So we're offering businesses and community groups one-on-one support to help them get ready for the event. And my team is ready to activate if you know of any employers, neighborhood organizations, or other community groups who are looking for information on biking, bike safety. Maybe they want route planning assistance. We're happy to help with that. And something else I'd like to mention is we're also available to help organize group rides. So if you're looking for best practices to gather people, to set up a route to a fun location, let us know and we would be happy to help you with that as well. So I am going to ask each of you to, again, help support the event by helping us get the word out about Bike to Work Day. Obviously, I would love all of you to pledge to ride at the biketoworkday.co website. If everybody here pledges, that will significantly improve our numbers, which is something that we are excited for. And in the next slide, I'm going to show you a link to a couple resources that will help you market this event, including adding it to your public-facing calendar. On that credenza to my left, we've got a couple of things. We've got a poster. We've got large posters, both in English and Spanish. We've got mini posters, and we have bookmarks. There is another handout I'd like to provide a little bit more context for, but those other assets, please feel free to grab as many as you would like. If you want some more, let me know. We can actually run upstairs and grab some more if these run out. But please do help us distribute these to businesses in your region. And as I mentioned, feel free to display them in your workplace as well. If you're free tomorrow and you feel like coming back here in 12 hours to this very room, we are hosting our open house, and it's a really fun opportunity for station organizers, stakeholders, business challenge participants to stop by and pick up materials to help them promote the event. We'll also be giving out free bagels from Call Your Mother. That place is really good. If you haven't tried it, why not come over tomorrow and we'll save some for you. Finally, I do want to give, like I mentioned, a little bit of context as to that handout in the back over there. We are hosting a group ride on Wednesday, June 25th, the evening of Bike to Work Day. We'll be leaving from the REI along the Platte, and we'll be riding to the Emporium Brewing Company in the Highlands. For the fourth year in a row, they're going to be brewing a Bike to Work Day beer. If any of you here are beer nerds, it's going to be a wheat session beer with citrus notes. I think it will be guava this year. In the past, it was lemon. I think that sounds very refreshing after a bike ride. And what's even more exciting is that anybody who bikes to the Emporium Brewing Company during the month of June will get $1 off their beer. And Way to Go will actually receive some proceeds to help us support our programming for every beer sold. So go drink some beer and do some good. If you grab that flyer, there is a QR code to sign up for the group ride, more information on what time we're leaving and where we're leaving from. So if you're interested, we would love to see you on the ride. You can also use that route to ride to the brewing company from downtown throughout the month, or really whenever you choose to. My team put together a really nice route, so please take a look at that. All right, so here I do have a QR code that you can all scan, or you can write down this bit.ly link, bit.ly/BTWD25BOD. This is where you can download some materials. I kept it really simple for everybody. We've got a graphic, we've got calendar copy, and then we've got some social media copy. Feel free to use all of that. We would love if you would post through your personal social media accounts that you plan to participate in Bike to Work Day. We'll have a link in those resources to the registration site. But again, it really just helps us widen our reach and get as many people aware of the event as possible. We also have this really nice asset that you can see a screenshot of up here. This is a flyer that shows all of the prizes that we'll be distributing, and we're highlighting the Estes Park prize because, again, I think that's going to be a really big draw, particularly for people who have not signed up in the past. Maybe this will incentivize them to do so. So feel free to print out those materials, scan that QR code, and then post something to your social media. We would really appreciate that. All right. And so I do want to also ask you, as I mentioned before, to please encourage businesses within your region to host stations. I think that there are a lot of benefits to hosting a station, and I've listed a lot of them right here. I'll talk a little bit in more detail about why some of this stuff is important. But I do think that hosting a station gives organizations really good visibility. This is an event that draws tens of thousands of people. They are not just passionate about cycling, but they're passionate about the region and exploring the Denver region. So absolutely, if you are hosting a station, you're going to get some new customers or potential clients as you invite them to celebrate with you. I also wanted to mention, especially with lots of construction going on some very busy corridors in our area, when you host a Bike to Work Day station, you're actually illustrating and demonstrating that there are a lot of ways to get to your business. This is a really, I think, compelling argument if you're trying to get businesses to host stations, especially if there is construction along a corridor that is impacting traffic and causing a lot of traffic congestion. I think we've all heard of businesses who are struggling because they feel that people are not able to drive to their location easily. Well, why not show them a bike route, and why not show them how well connected their business location is to that bike route? Before we move on, I do want to give a quick shout out to some member governments who are hosting stations. I'm just going to list out a bunch of member governments. If you don't hear yours and you're wondering why, get in touch with my team. We will help you organize a station within your jurisdiction. But starting with City of Sheridan, Town of Parker, City of Lafayette, City of Edgewater, City of Louisville, City of Westminster, City of Lakewood, Town of Castle Rock, Jefferson County, Cherry Hills Village, City of Arvada, City of Golden, Arapahoe County, Highlands Ranch, City of Greenwood Village, City of Littleton, and we're going to make a little mention of Town of Erie because they are in the process of planning their Bike to Work Day station, which we very much appreciate. But again, just wanted to thank all of the member governments who are actually organizing these stations through their jurisdiction, and all of you can do that as well. Let me know again if you'd like some resources. All right. The last thing I want to mention, become a sponsor. If you are interested in becoming a sponsor, please let me know maybe tonight because we are closing down our t-shirt sponsorships very soon. We do have to provide that artwork over to the designer as soon as possible. And then I think this is also really fun. You all are entitled to one free merchandise item for Bike to Work Day. We've got 3 shirts and a hat. And it's not just board members, but your alternates as well can receive one free item. We are closing down the store, though, tomorrow, so please scan this tonight. You should have all received an email, but if you haven't made your order yet, feel free to just scan this QR code and order your merchandise right here and now. And that's all I've got for you today. I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, we are here to help you make Bike to Work Day a success in your region.
Director Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Given the imagery and the theme, struck me, and I don't know, I guess a lot of us might have done this when we were kids. We used to clip baseball cards or playing cards to our front wheels, to the not to the spokes, obviously, but or to the base, make that little sound so we think we're in a hardware or something. Have you thought of encouraging maybe a special category of pride? Oh, you did?
Indeed, that's what came to our minds as well. So Michaela is actually holding up some custom cards that we produced specifically for that use. Director Flynn, we would love to have you at our open house tomorrow. We'll actually have these on display on a bicycle so you can see how it looks.
Oh.
A bagel.
You could just stay here overnight. Good idea.
Other questions? I wanted to make sure everybody knew this artwork is done in-house. This is not contract. There we are, Director Carmelia. So this is, I think, amazing. I have no artistic ability whatsoever. So when I see it, I recognize it, and I do want to say. Any other questions? Yes, Director Baer.
Thank you for the presentation. Erie is super, super excited to host a regional station, and Miguel from Erie will be here for the open house tomorrow. So say hi, and make sure you get some of those cool cards. That's
excellent.
I'm wondering, as I was watching the presentation, this is so great, and thinking about increasing participation and everything. Can you talk about accessibility in an event that kind of, highlights able-bodied people? what are some ways that we can incorporate the entire community?
Yeah, I think the really easy answer to that question is e-bikes. I think e-bikes really help to sort of close that gap. It makes it easier for people to travel longer distances, and you're not necessarily going to have to be the most able-bodied person to get around on an e-bike. I will also say that other options besides driving in your car are really, I guess, fit within the theme and the spirit of Bike to Work Day. It's really about getting, out of that single occupant vehicle. So stacking a trip with transit, maybe you've got a long commute and you're only comfortable riding a short distance. Consider riding to a train station, taking your bike on the train, and then finishing the rest of your trip on your bike.
Other questions or comments? Director Mills.
I just want to mention some of the cities that were not listed may also be participating through like their local bike clubs or through Smart Commute and stuff like that. So just know that we've historically participated through those means.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Nisha.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to move, I would draw your attention to our informational items here. I did see Director Rich Morrow in the back with Jen Castle. I just want to say thank you on behalf of the Board of Directors for your hard work during this legislative session. And for, I know you were there every single day and often until late at night. And we truly appreciate all your efforts. So thank you. We'll move on to committee reports. The chair requests that these reports be brief and reflect decisions made and information that's germane to the business of DRCOG. First, we have staff, Ron Papsdorf.
Real quick, May 1st, the Statewide Transportation Advisory Committee met. STAC did recommend that the Transportation Commission approve CDOT's draft fiscal year 2026 through fiscal year 2029 statewide transportation improvement program. And for those that aren't fully familiar with how the Transportation Improvement Program and the STIP work together, you adopt the regional transportation improvement program, the state has to adopt that unchanged, unamended into the statewide transportation improvement program, but they're required to, like us, have a 4-year STIP in place. So they added a couple of years to their existing STIP, not a lot of project changes on their end. There was significant discussion at STAC about the state budget situation and the impact on transportation funding. You've heard about and we've talked about, and we will continue to discuss the impacts on the Multimodal Options Fund program and how we'll address that. So that was discussed extensively at STAC. Also, as part of the state budget adjustments, one of the state grant programs that some of you have applied for and received grants through, the Revitalizing Main Streets program, was cut and eliminated through the state's budget situation. So CDOT will no longer be offering grant opportunities through that Revitalizing Main Street program. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll conclude their staff report.
Thank you very much. Metro Mayor's Caucus, Director Starker.
Thank you, Chair. The caucus has not met since our last meeting, so we will not provide a report tonight. Thank you.
Metro Area County Commissioners, Executive Director Rex.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. MAC met last Friday. We had a presentation from Arapahoe County on related to the pillars that there are priorities for the Metro Area County Commissioners. And what else, Melinda? Thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you. The MAC also received a legislative wrap-up from Rich Morrow, our Director of Legislative Affairs. And we also received an update and had a discussion on USACE, which is the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness. We found out that they recently were unfortunately disbanded. So Mark Resin and Heidi Grove of Boulder gave us that update.
Next up, RAC. Executive Director Rex.
There you go. Thank you, sir, very much. We got to get our own mics. Well, first of all, Melinda, thank you very much for saving my bacon on that. I totally forgot that I was supposed to do MAC as well. So the RAC, Regional Air Quality Council, met on May 2nd. And the two things of note on there, so despite the fact that the state has decided to voluntarily request reclassification to severe non-attainment, we are still responsible for submitting certain chapters associated with the state implementation plan. So we had a conversation about those chapters. And the other thing that we talked about was indirect sources and how that ultimately affects the air quality within our region. And I think there probably will be a rule associated with that at some future date. Thank you, sir.
E470 Authority, Director Mulvey.
Yeah, I'm going to bullet point because it was a very, very busy meeting. The first was an award given to an individual who stopped his work truck in order to save a person who was in crisis on the highway, very dangerous, and we were just happy to recognize his selflessness in that regard. Secondly, road widening 104th to U.S. State Highway 85 is going to be 3 lanes, so there'll be some construction there. And then there will be travel plazas that are going to be starting up in Commerce City, Aurora, and Parker. And then the next bullet point is at 48th Avenue Interchange. It's new, and there are tolls waived until June 6th. So a lot bringing our region together.
Thank you very much. Next up, Regional Transportation District, Director Siroy.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple things. This next week, our board will be taking up an action item to update our equitable TOD policy, and this is to respond to Senate Bill 24230 from last year, which allowed and gave us more flexibility in terms of the ability to offer discounts on our property that is available for affordable housing, as well as this year's transit reform bill was asked us to update our ETOD policy. So we will be doing that, and the board will be undertaking that next week. The RTD partnership program call for projects ended earlier this month. We got 10 applications at over about $6.5 million, and we expect to review those projects and make awards by August. So look forward to that. And then lastly, hopefully, everybody can be relieved by this, the RTD slow zones should be done this week. So my understanding is that the E and the R-line slow zones are going to be done, I think, after tomorrow. And then all the slow zones should be over with. So that's the end of my update.
Good news. Thank you. Anything else from any members? Seeing none, we are adjourned.